What's up, guys? Um, we've got the USQ tier list, something that I've been mulling over in my head for a while. Um, yeah, let's get right into it. Clerks, the movie that started it all, it's got to be S tier. It has to be. Um, Perfect cinematography. Mallrats. Younger me would have put Mallrats over Clerks. See, and that's what makes this so hard. That's actually why I went back and watched the vast majority of these multiple times over. Uh, because Mallrats always jumps around for me. I'm gonna say A tier. I laugh at Mallrats, but I'll get into it more here in just a little bit once we get into the later movies that are a little more divisive. Chasing Amy, A tier, just or S tier, just below Clerks. I absolutely love Chasing Amy. Um, Mallrats, I enjoyed Mallrats, and that was my favorite up until I saw Chasing Amy, and then it kind of flip flops. But recently, that's all changed. Dogma, you can't deny the greatness that is Dogma, and I'm willing to put that in front of Clerks. I'm willing to do that. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I'm gonna say A tier, just because that's, for one, Mallrats getting kind of lonely, and two, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. It's funny almost to its discredit. It is hilarious, don't get me wrong, but it's it's almost too much, if that makes sense. Clerks the animated series, I honestly could not get into. I'm not putting anything below B tier because I don't really feel like anything that Kevin Smith has done has been below B tier. Even Tusk, I actually enjoyed Tusk. So even though I couldn't get into Clerks the animated series, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Um, if they had the lost scene on here, which it is on YouTube, I went and watched it. The lost scene would be in uh, up in S tier with Clerks 1, just because it fits along perfectly. Clerks 2, uh, S tier. Actually, I'm willing to put that ahead of Chasing Amy. Chasing Amy is falling further down my list than I was really expecting, to be honest. Jay and Silent Bob's Super Groovy cartoon movie. Oh, B tier. I hate to do that, but I hate to do that to the only animated uh, things on this list. But I would actually put it behind Clerks the animated series, just because it was almost like Kevin and Jay were trying too hard with that. that's how I felt personally. Now we get into the two divisive ones. Jay and Silent Bob reboot goes S tier ahead of Dogma. If wow, it's not okay. There we go. And here's why. My favorite Kevin Smith movies have always had some sort of emotion to them. And that's what drew me into Kevin Smith, was the comedy. The comedy drew me in because when I first saw his movies, I was a young, impressionable, immature kid. I almost feel as if I grew up with Kevin Smith, because as I grew and I started to watch the movies more, I started to appreciate the emotional side of them, such as Chasing Amy, Clerks, Clerks 2, Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Now, Jay and Silent Bob reboot actually gets me because of the story they're telling with Jay and his daughter. He's always been a fuck up, never knew his dad, and all of a sudden he's got this kid that he's, he wants to do better for. He wants better for her than he got himself, and that hit me hard. Clerks 2, actually Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I was supposed to go and see the Reboot Roadshow in Columbus, Ohio with my mom, and that never panned out. Clerks 2, S tier, just behind Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and yet another movie that hit me hard. Like I said, it had its funny parts, but I was drawn into the emotion. The whole story of Randall surviving a heart attack that should have killed him, and you could clearly see that Kevin was putting himself in that scenario. But then to have his best friend Dante die of the same heart attack. Just a few years prior to Clerks 3 coming out, my mother passed away in my arms of a massive heart attack, and to kind of relive those emotions, it hurts, but at the same time it's nice. It's nice to see in film form. It's hard to explain. So I know I'm out of left field by putting those two movies in S tier, actually above Dogma, because Dogma is widely rated as one of Kevin Smith's greatest films among his fans anyways. But I feel a personal connection to Clerks 3 and Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I don't know that anything could actually top those. I've I've watched them both several times and watched them both probably about 3 times this month. Well, not this month, but in the last 4 weeks. Just searching for something to watch. And I always fall back to those two. It's like I said, I started watching his movies for the comedy and stayed for the emotional impact that each movie had. Chasing Amy, way ahead of its time. Clerks was a cinematography masterpiece. Like, nothing more to be said about that. Dogma, that's just an iconic story. And all of these movies, they touch me in some way. And actually, when it comes to Mallrats, when I'm trying to introduce somebody new to the world of Kevin Smith, I always start with Mallrats because myself, I tried to start with Clerks myself, and because it was in black and white, could have just been because I was young, I didn't give it a chance. I watched Mallrats and I was like, man, this movie's funny as hell. And somebody's like, yeah, you need to watch Clerks. So I gave it another shot, and lo and behold, it's up there. So just because Mallrats is that low doesn't mean that I absolutely hate it, because there's none of his work that I actually hate. I might not be able to get into it like Clerks the Animated Series, which I'd actually put Super Groovy Cartoon Movie in front of that, because I will occasionally go back and watch the cartoon movie, where Clerks the Animated Series, it was like I watched the DVDs once and that was it. Anyways, that's all the time I got for now. Be good to yourselves, be good to one another.